So in Kansas City, I got here in 1988. I'm working white-collar crime. And one Friday afternoon, an agent from our organized crime squad walks over to our area, and he says, does anybody want to go on a search warrant on Sunday morning? We need an extra body. And I'm a new agent, and when you're new, you want to do everything. So I threw up my hand. I go, yeah, I want to go. And besides that, it was an organized crime case. So we go to this house of a bookie here in Kansas City. And we serve a search warrant. Search warrant looks something like this. And as a matter of fact, now you have to remember, this is 1988. This is pre-9/11, pre-cybercrime, pre-identity theft. FBI has a different mandate in 1988, and we're working on organized crime, and bookie cases was one of the things we did. So we worked on this bookie case. The agent takes the bookie aside, and he's interviewing the bookie. Now, I'm new, I'm on the scene, and I'm at the bookie's desk, and my job is to gather all his records and his bookmaking material, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm marking it as evidence and making an inventory. And so it's a Sunday morning, it's September, baseball is in season, football is ongoing. What do you think happens next? I'm at the bookie's desk. The phone rings, thank you, so I answer. I don't know what to do, actually, so I asked the agent, I go, hey, Al, the phone's ringing, what should I do? He says, go ahead and answer it. So I pick up the phone. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I'm going to back up just a little bit. I mentioned that I grew up in Connecticut, and my dad was a small business owner. He actually owned a retail store, and about 1973 is when I started working at my dad's store. Now, this is a Google Street View picture today of that shopping center in Norwalk, Connecticut, and you can't see my pointer there, but if you look about in the middle where that white car is, my dad owned a retail store right in that section right there. He's retired now, but during the time he owned the store, I worked for my dad as a teenager. And there would be this group of guys that would come in my dad's store on a regular basis when I was working in the summers, after school, on weekends, and they would buy a particular newspaper. Now, you've heard of the Washington Post. Well, there's a paper in New York that's also called the Post, but it's a lot different than the Washington Post. This was called the New York Post, and you'll see the difference in a minute. This is the kind of headlines you'd see in the New York Post. Yeah. And the New York Post was also the newspaper that told us that Tiger Woods was actually not a tiger. He was actually a cheetah. Yeah, yeah. So back in the 70s, these guys would come in my dad's store and they'd buy the New York Post, not because what they saw on the front. They could care less about what was on the front page. They flipped it over, and if you flipped over the New York Post, it was on the back page was the sports section, all right? Now, if they turned in about 3 pages into the sports page section of the paper, you'd find the betting lines. And these guys would come in my dad's store on a regular basis, and they'd stand around right near the counter where I was working, taking care of customers, and they'd look at the sports lines and they'd talk about what games they were going to bet on that particular day. So they would say things like, you know, I'm taking Dallas -10, or I'm taking Florida +200, or I'm taking the Chiefs, and they talk about the betting lines and the vernacular and all the lingo that goes with gambling. And after hearing that over the weeks and months, I started to learn that myself, just from osmosis, from hearing them talk about it. I learned all about gambling from them, hearing them. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So now fast forward 15 years, I move away from home, I go to college, go to graduate school, I'm working for the FBI, sitting at the bookie's desk, the phone rings, the agent says, answer it, I pick it up, the guy says, who's this? I said, my real name. It wasn't undercover. So I just said, we weren't doing an undercover operation. I go, my name's Jeff. And I figured he'd hang up the phone. I'm not his normal bookie, he's going to hang up. He didn't hang up, he goes, Jeff, what's the line on the Kansas City Chiefs today? So I knew exactly how to read the lines because I remember from my dad's store. I looked down at the page. I go, Chiefs are -3. How much you want? No, wait a minute. This is 1988. Chiefs are plus 65 points, I think. Chiefs are -3. How much you want? He goes, give me 100 on the Chiefs. I go, you got it. So I take down the guy's bet. Next guy calls up. He wants to do an over bet on the Vikings. He goes, what's the over on the Vikings? I go, it's 42-43. How much you want? He goes, give me 100 on the over. I go, you got it. Next guy calls up and he wants to do a parlay bet. Now a parlay bet could be either 2 teams or 3 teams. You get odds, but you got to win all the bets. And he forgot how much it paid. He goes, I want to do a parlay bet. I go, how many teams? He goes, 2. He goes, how much does that pay? How much are you going to bet? And I remember from my dad's store that 2-team parlay pays 12-5. So he goes, I'm going to bet 50. I go, you'll get paid 120 if you win both. He goes, okay. So I'm giving the guy instructions on how to bet. No one is questioning the fact that there's a strange guy named Jeff answering the phone taking bets, except the FBI agent in our office downtown who's got the phone tapped, we're listening, and he's going, wait a minute. 2 guys go in there, 2 agents go in there and take this bookie out. There's some other bookie named Jeff answering the phone. The bets are rolling in like crazy. One guy is so loose with the information, he's like, Jeff, I don't know you, but I get paid on Tuesdays, right? I'm going to get paid, aren't I? I go, yeah, we'll pay you. And he says, my name's John Smith. I live at 333 Maple Street. You're going to come over on Tuesday and pay me, right? I go, yeah, John, we'll be over. Don't you worry about that. So finally, one guy comes in. He calls up and he goes, Jeff who? And that's what I expected from the beginning. He goes, Jeff who? So I wasn't going to lie because this is not undercover. And I wanted to give my last name. So the first thing I thought, I'm just going to tell him, Jeff with the FBI. He starts cracking up. He's cracking up. Jeff with the FBI. That's hilarious. Jeff with the FBI. That's really, really funny. Give me 200 on the Chiefs. He bet anyway. And the reason why I tell you that story is because, I don't know, it's just fun to tell. But no, the reason why I tell you that is because when we're on the phone with people, when we're talking to strangers, email, or anything, just be careful what you say. You may be giving information to people that you don't know and you don't want to give that up. And besides that, when you call your bookie this Sunday, if you're betting on the Chiefs, which is not a good idea to begin with, but if you're betting on the Chiefs, make sure you're not talking to an FBI agent on the phone. No.